Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a real classic, Don Norman's The Design of Everyday Things. This is the book that explains why some products just click, while others just leave you feeling kind of clumsy and frustrated. And here's the spoiler. It's not your fault. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's be real. Have you ever walked up to a door, given it a confident push, and nothing? Only to realize, oh, it's a pull door. We've all been there. It's that classic moment of feeling a little dumb. Don Norman actually tells this great story about his friend who got literally trapped between two sets of glass doors in a post office in Europe. Why? Because the design gave him zero clues on how to actually open them. And that exact feeling of what am I doing wrong brings us right to the core idea of this whole book. And honestly, it's so empowering. Here it is. When you can't figure something out, the problem isn't you. It's the design. Period. So Norman actually has a name for this. He calls it the psychopathology of everyday things. It's a fancy term, but it basically just means that feeling of frustration, that self-blame you get when you're fighting with something that should be simple. And it happens for one reason and one reason only. The design has completely failed you. So, what's the fix? Well, good design really boils down to two big things. First, there's discoverability. That's just a simple question. Can I even figure out what I'm supposed to do here? And second, there's understanding, which is, okay, what does all this stuff mean? That confusing door we were talking about, total failure of discoverability.
All right. So the reason we get so stuck is because there's this gap. Norman calls it a gulf, and it's the space between what's going on in your head and how the device actually works.
And it turns out there are actually two of these gulfs we have to cross. First, you've got the gulf of execution. This is you trying to figure out how to do something. You think, I want to make the room brighter, but then you're staring at a panel of switches wondering which one to press. The second one is the gulf of evaluation. This is you trying to figure out, okay, did what I just do actually work? Did the light come on? Is it brighter now? A really well-designed product basically builds a bridge for you over both of these gulfs. It's pretty wild, but every single time we use something, our brain is subconsciously running through this whole 7-stage cycle. We start with a goal, we figure out a plan, and we do the thing. That's us crossing that gulf of execution. Then we look at what happened, we try to make sense of it, and we compare it to what we wanted to happen in the first place, and that's crossing the gulf of evaluation. When a design is bad, we just get stuck somewhere along the way.
Okay, so how do designers build those bridges? Well, lucky for us, they have this whole toolkit of principles. Think of it like a secret language they use to make stuff intuitive and easy to use. Let's decode a few of the most important ones. First up is a concept called affordances. An affordance is simply the relationship between you and an object, all the things it affords you or allows you to do. A chair affords sitting. A knob affords turning. Simple, right? But here's the catch. An affordance exists whether you can see it or not. A door can afford being pushed, but if you don't know that, what good is it?
So, how do we know what's possible? That's where signifiers come in. Signifiers are the clues. They're the little signs, the labels, the sounds, anything that signals what to do and where to do it. Think about that flat metal plate on a door. That's a signifier, and it's screaming push here. A signifier is what makes an affordance obvious. Okay, next up is mapping. Mapping is just the relationship between the controls and what they, control. The classic example is the stovetop. Imagine you've got 4 burners in a square, right? But the knobs are all in a straight line. Uh-oh. Which knob controls the back left burner? If you have to pause and think, or worse, just guess, that's bad mapping. Good mapping is when it's just obvious. The layout of the controls perfectly mirrors the layout of the burners, no guesswork needed. Feedback is another big one. It's how a device talks back to you, letting you know, hey, I got your message. Think about a button that clicks or lights up when you press it. That's feedback. But Norman makes a great point here. Feedback is tricky. Too much of it, and it's like a backseat driver nagging you constantly. It can be super distracting. It really has to be just right, immediate, and informative without being annoying. So, all these things, signifiers, mapping, feedback, they all work together to build something that Norman says is the most important principle of all, the conceptual model. This is basically the little story you tell yourself in your head about how something works. He tells this amazing story about his own refrigerator. For years, it had two controls, one for the freezer and one for the fresh food. His mental model was simple. One controls the freezer temp, one controls the fridge temp. Makes sense, right? Except it was totally wrong. In reality, there was only one cooling unit, and the controls just changed how much cold air went to each compartment. A bad conceptual model like that pretty much guarantees you're going to be confused and frustrated.
So if getting the conceptual model wrong means we're doomed to fail, does that mean we have to memorize how every single thing in our lives works? Do our brains have to be these giant hard drives? Absolutely not. And this leads to one of the most brilliant insights in the whole book. Knowledge isn't just something that's stored in your head. A ton of it is out there, in the world.
Think about it this way. Knowledge in the head is stuff you've memorized, like your email password. Once you've learned it, it's super efficient. Knowledge in the world is, well, it's stuff in the world, like a sticky note on your monitor with that same password written on it. You don't have to learn anything, but you do have to find the note and read it. And great design is all about finding the perfect balance between the two.
And this right here is the fundamental trade-off that designers are always grappling with. If they rely too much on knowledge in the head, they force us to learn a bunch of arbitrary, complicated rules. That's hard. But if they rely only on knowledge in the world, you end up with visual clutter. Labels on top of labels on top of labels. The sweet spot, the best design, always finds that elegant balance.
Okay, so how do designers actually use all these ideas to make things that people love? The answer is a process. It's called human-centered design.
A really cool way to think about this process is something called the double diamond model. So instead of just jumping to a solution, designers first go wide. They diverge to explore and make sure they're solving the right problem. A lot of times, the problem you think you have isn't the real one. Then they narrow down. They converge to define that problem super clearly. Only then do they go wide again, diverging to brainstorm all sorts of potential solutions, before finally converging one last time on the one they're going to build and deliver.
And inside that big diamond structure, they're constantly looping through a cycle of 4 steps. They observe real people in the real world. They generate a ton of ideas, no bad ideas at this stage. They build quick and dirty prototypes, and then they test those prototypes with real people. There's this famous motto from the design firm IDEO, fail frequently, fail fast. And you might wonder, why would you want to fail? Because every single failure is a lesson. It's a massive learning opportunity that gets you one step closer to what will actually work.
So let's zoom out. Why does all this matter? I mean, this isn't just about getting less annoyed by your microwave or a weird door handle. In the world we live in today, understanding these design principles is actually a critical skill.
The business guru Tom Peters put it perfectly. He said design can be a company's biggest competitive edge. And he's right. The companies that really truly focus on the user, the ones that build things that are a joy to use, that are understandable, those are the companies that win.
Okay, let's wrap this up with the big takeaways. First and foremost, the next time something frustrates you, I want you to remember this. It is not your fault. It's a design failure. Full stop. Good design is discoverable. It talks back to you with feedback. And now you have the vocabulary to see what's going on. You can spot the bad mapping, the confusing signifiers, those gulfs between you and the machine. And you know the solution is always found by putting people first.
I can pretty much guarantee you're never going to look at a door or a remote control or your car's dashboard the same way again. You're armed now. You have the tools to see the hidden language of the world around you. So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you see it, what's the first everyday object you're going to redesign in your head?